Friends, it is a privilege to again share with you as we create this resource for churches and ministries to be able to dive into the conversation of worship, especially when it comes to this telos of diverse worship. And it's a privilege for me to be able to bring in folks that have been connected to my story and journey who have, in different ways, modeled what this looks like. And so today I have a very dear friend with me that is going to share with us a little bit of his reflection about worshiping God in the midst of what might seem hopeless, and how do we connect to God in a sense of sincerity and with a heart of passion. And so I would like to introduce to you Dr. Lee Zeidema, who is a dear friend from Granville, Michigan, and he's joining us this evening to share a bit of his story and perspective. And so as we dive into this conversation of a telos of diverse worship, our goal is, while we journey toward beloved community and how we foster that, I think a significant piece is hearing story. And a part of that is recognizing that there are moments where it's difficult to worship God. There are moments where it's difficult to find ourselves in a position of humility, in a position where our heart posture is leaning toward God. And so, Lee, I just have a question for you. How do you, within your own story, where have you found God at work, and how do you worship Him through the midst of what might seem hopeless? How do you find God in places that don't seem hopeful? How have you seen that in your own worship life?
Well, Jeremy, it's a privilege to be on this with you and to speak into probably one of the most important parts of hard journeys that we have in life. And the older you get, the more likely you have encountered these kind of circumstances.
Mm.
Um, a couple of passages, I'll just read them. Things that are encouraging that I've seen in others and others have encouraged me with. Psalms 121.
Mm.
Verses 1 and 2. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Ephesians 3:16. I pray that from his glorious unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his spirit. Philippians 3:14. I press on toward the goal to win the prize of which God has called me heavenward in Christ. Um, and and Psalms, you could do so many of these, Jeremy,
Mm.
but I'll finish it up here with Psalms 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and
Mm.
saves those who are crushed in spirit.
Mm.
Um, in those times where you're going through the hardest of experiences, things you did not see coming, um, there's a term that when I was face down, you know, they call it snot face down, and that's kind of a rough term to it. But when you've had that moment where you don't have anything else, nowhere else to turn, uh, and then you're faced with, do I trust God? And that in the toughest of times, when nothing else, no other options are available, and you're face down in the carpeting, and you're just crying out because you're just hurting, or going through tough something that you don't know how to get out of humanly, and no words from anybody else can speak into those hard spaces. And I call it, just between the Lord and I, desperate intimacy. And it's arguably one of the most joy filled, um, valuable positions of tenureship to someone who is going through any tough time is when you and the Lord are together and there's no one else in the room, and you find that he is trustworthy, that he does bring comfort. I believe he doesn't take the mud puddle away, but he what he does promise is to be in the mud puddle with you. And
Yeah.
what more from a friend can you ask?
Mm.
Um, so that desperate intimacy, it's something that you later on, after you've gone through the toughest times and you've felt that that closeness with God that you've never experienced before because you've never been totally dependent on him, and nothing else. There's no other options. And you find out that he's faithful in those moments, that you can endure, and that he is in the mud puddle with you, and that he is walking through, and that his promise is that you can claim those. And he's so faithful to him. And then you have that option, or that opportunity, thank you, that rises up when no one else has felt in your small circle of friends the pain, whether it's divorce or whether it's cancer or whether,
Yeah.
things that we've gone through personally. And a chance for someone who is going through those same things down the road, for you to look them square in the eyes and say, I know, I've been there. I know that. And I know someone that you can trust.
Yeah. Wow. Something that, as you were speaking, that came to mind as I've been developing this idea around diverse worship is communion. And it's, both with God and with
Mm,
one another.
mm,
And, it is a space where belonging isn't just this theoretical idea, but it's
right.
really embodied in how we worship itself. And I think that when we consider the significance of, one of the passages you shared was Psalm 34:18 about the Lord being close to those who are crushed in spirit.
Right.
One of the beauties of worship and one of the beauties of diversity in worship is that for those that have been crushed in spirit, whether it's racial injustice or things going on in their family life or exclusion or trauma or
Right.
marginalization, whatever it is, we can acknowledge that our worship isn't only praise to God, but it's
Right.
also lament. And in those
Yes.
moments, it's holding the tension of the joy
Right.
and the suffering,
Right.
of the exile and the belonging. And one of the things that I think is so neat about our opportunity to kind of dive into that space of intimacy that we don't often experience is that we get to make room, right? To
That's
not
right.
rush past those moments of hardship,
Right. Right.
rush past those moments that can distort
Right.
our view of what's happening, but really lean into
Right.
embracing that as a communal space where we can find community, we can find support, and healing can begin. And I think it really speaks to being an active prophetic witness that declares that God is with us in spite of what's happening, that
That's
God
right.
sees us. And I just wonder, as we close that out, how would you say that falls in line with maybe your vision of how you would see worshiping together or worshiping God in the midst of hardship and hard times?
Well, you can look in someone else's eyes, and you can see when if they've gone through cancer
Mm,
and you have too, you just can see it in their, if they've gone through racial injustice, if they've been
mm,
abused, if they, you name the hardship,
yeah,
and you can see it in each other, and
yeah.
you can relate. And you can't manufacture desperate intimacy,
No, you can't.
but you can embrace it and share with another who is just lost in pain,
Yeah,
that there is true hope.
yeah.
And I think it comes in so many flavors that
Mm,
it just only allows us a deeper walk with each other when
mm,
you've walked through deep waters.
mm. That's good. That's good. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that nugget with us. And for those of you that continue to look at the resource, I encourage you to spend some time thinking through and focusing on the praise that we give to God, not only through high moments, but also recognizing that God is with us in the lament as well, and that we can worship God in that space. Thanks so much for sharing your words with us today. We really appreciate
Hey,
it.
privileged to be with you, Jeremy.
Thank you.